Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Welcome back to Business Matters with me, Karl Fitzpatrick. I'm now joined on the line by Chris Dyer, company culture and remote work expert. Chris, we'll be delving into the implementation of a positive and engaging company culture and the future of remote work. But first, you've been the CEO of many companies. So how would you describe your own leadership style?
Hey, thanks for having me on the show. My leadership style is always evolving. I want to learn. I want to, figure out how I can get better all the time. But I think ultimately it's my job. And I think the farther up you go, whether you're ultimately the CEO, the owner of the company, it's your job to get out your virtual machete every day and to clear away the crap for your team. It's your job to help them remove obstacles, help them do their amazing work. Without resistance, without needless resistance, without needless approvals and ridiculous things getting in their way. Because that's what I feel like ultimately destroys culture and creates people who don't want to be there.
And what is the power of company culture?
I think the power is that we can have high profits, we can have high performance, we can have high productivity, and people can be healthy and happy, right? So that's the power of what great company culture does, is it brings us ultimately what the owners want, what the senior leaders want, which is a great thriving company, what stakeholders want, and also brings you what employees want, right? Which is a great place to work.
And of course, it was Peter Drucker, the management consultant, that said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. What are your thoughts on that?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been around people that have the best strategy in the world and they have the greatest idea in the world. And then somebody else with a fantastic team and half an idea just crushes them. And we see this all the time, that first to market is not always the ones that do well, right? Second or third to market sometimes end up crushing it. And I think that's because of the culture and the team that they bring to the marketplace.
So in your book, The Power of Company Culture, you talk about what the best and worst companies are doing when it comes to company culture. So what are the characteristics of good and bad company culture?
So I sort of define it as there's bad, and then there's good, and then there's great. And in my book, I'm ultimately creating the blueprint for what you have to do to be great. So what's good? Good means you've done the basics. You got a value statement, a customer service statement. You've got those little words on the wall, and you've at least done something to try to say, this is who we are, and this is the direction we want to go. There's more to that to be great. You have to do more than just the basics. But so many companies don't even do the basics, right? And so a bad company culture is one that allows the culture to just be created and to exist without much foreplay, without much thought to it, possibly allowing there to be these toxic behaviors and toxic leaders, and allowing these, I guess, sort of personalities to rule the organization versus the organization ruling the personalities, right? But saying this is who we are, this is why we exist, and this is how you should act. If you are a member of this group, this is how we act. This is what we do. Whether you agree with that or not is your choice to join that company. But ultimately, being that very, very clear is so important.
And you mentioned the words on the wall, the mission, vision, values. So often they're generic terms that are taken maybe from their competitors' websites or elsewhere. If you're bringing a company through the creation of those values, what's the process?
It depends on where you are in your journey. So if you're just starting off, if it's yourself and you're one person and you're going to hire a couple people, you're going to be very clear about what you want. You're going to maybe do that work yourself. If you're suddenly become a senior leader or the CEO or maybe just running a team, then you may want to be much more collaborative in that process and really taking on from those people who have already been there and trying to figure out, well, what's working, what have good employees or good leaders been in the organization, and then how do we build on that? But it's ultimately taking an intentional role and an intentional stab at what are we going to be? How do we get there? I often use appreciative inquiry for this process. And the first part of appreciative inquiry is the dream state. So how do we dream about what we actually want to be when we grow up? Like, what does that look like? What is that epitome of, it's 5 years from now and the company's fantastic and we're the top of the world and everyone loves working here and we have great talent, we have great leaders. How do we get there? Right? And so you have to think about that for a moment, and then you can start to design it and figure out how to turn it into destiny and do all those other things. But we have to take that time to really think, not to get too squishy, but it's almost like manifesting, right? You have to like think about what you actually want the end result to be before your actions and the universe can align for you to actually get to that point.
And what are the 7 pillars of culture success?
So the 7 pillars that I have put forward that we've tested over and over again, we've seen the greatest cultures in the world, the greatest companies have these 7 traits that they do really, really well beyond the stuff that makes you good. And that is transparency, listening, positivity. We talked about push of inquiry a second ago. They know how to deal with mistakes in a positive way, turning those into learning opportunities versus, firing and scaring everyone to death to never make a mistake. They have a great recognition program. They celebrate what makes us unique. And then finally, they measure what matters.
And once you have those pillars in place, what happens next?
Well, I think at some level, everyone probably has some sense of those things, or they're doing some level of that or lack thereof. But it's ultimately about if you take my 7 and you're like, okay, we're really good at these 4, but man, are we bad at these 3? Or like we're bad at these 2 and this one we could use a little bit of work. That's where I think you need to start. Don't worry about trying to get a lot better in some of those other areas where maybe you're already doing pretty good with listening. Maybe you do a good job of listening to your employees and your clients, but maybe you're terrible at transparency, or maybe you're terrible at, dealing with mistakes. When mistakes happen, the whole world shuts down. And so figure out where like you're really, really bad as an organization and how can you get better? Because what I have noticed over and over, like 100 times I've seen this happen. We go in and we work on that one pillar where they are the worst. And it makes such a radical difference for the company and for the employees that so many other issues that they thought were problems were ultimately just, it's almost like putting, a Band-Aid on something. But you realize like, well, what was actually a problem? What was actually the result of the problem? What was actually the symptom of maybe something larger going on?
There's an old saying, to change the culture, you need to change the people. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by change the people. So if you mean change their habits and change their behaviors and change,
replace them.
No, I think that is so incredibly wrong. I mean, I have 100 examples where I've gone in, we've changed no people. We just changed the culture. We changed made it very clear about who we are, what we're going to do. Now, some people self-selected out. Some people said this is not for me, but we did not remove them. We made it very clear about who we are, what we're going to do, what's important. And then we backed it up and we were consistent and we didn't waver from that. And the people shifted. They changed. And I could give you more examples if you want to go deeper on that, but I could not disagree more with that statement. It's about the culture, not about the people.
And what was done to incentivize the change in those people?
You have to show what's in for them, right? I mean, ultimately, in the end of the day, people need to understand what is the benefit to them. It's nice for them to know what's the benefit for their coworkers, for the company, for their leaders. But when we show them that if they're transparent, what's going to happen, we show them if we start measuring things in a more significant way, how that's going to help them and how it's going to help their job be easier and how it's going to help maybe their clients be happier. People will shift very, very quickly. If it's just, we'll go do this report because the CEO wants it, that's not enough. I mean, that's, scary. Maybe you could do it because you don't want to lose your job. But if you do it because it's going to help the company run better and we're going to keep people, we're not going to have layoffs. And, there's a larger goal to that, people will do it.
Since COVID-19, the remote working revolution has taken hold. But in recent months, we're seeing a big shift from larger companies who want to bring staff back to the office. Why is this the case?
There's some of the chasing what their competitors are doing. Well, if this person is doing it, then we're going to do it. That's one part. Another part is we certainly have seen companies who want to shed a little bit of their workforce, and it's much easier to say we're coming back to the office and lose 10 or 15% of people who don't want to do that than it is to say we're having a layoff. So this has always been a pretty devious and savvy strategy to lay some people off without laying them off. If they choose to quit, you're not paying benefits, you're not doing, so there's some strategy there. Certainly we have seen that companies have been absolutely terrible at figuring out that remote or hybrid work is different than when we're all sitting in an office. And so we have to operate differently. Our meetings should operate differently. How we manage people operates differently. And if we've seen the companies that have put those things in place, that have changed those operating procedures and thinking about how they help their people in different ways, they love remote work and they've kept it. But those that were essentially trying to put a saddle in a car, trying to ride an old horse in a new vehicle, they've struggled and they've just gone backwards. Because it's easier for them to go back to what they know than it was for them to come up with new ways to do the work.
And what most effective new ways have you seen companies introduce when managing a remote workforce?
I can give you a couple bigger pillars. I mean, one, it's about how we meet. So getting meetings right with remote work is really, really important. How many time zones are you dealing with? Right? Are you dealing with 2 or 3 like I was? That was typically what we were dealing with was 3 or maybe 4 time zones. Other companies might be dealing with 8 or 9 time zones. That's a totally different, insane challenge. So are you requiring the same 3 people on a team to have to be on a call at 2 a.m.? That's not sustainable. So how do we collaborate? Can we collaborate more? And then so async collaboration would be the next part. Can we shift to we all have to be doing the work at the same time? We all have to be at our desk at the same time and be able to talk to at the same time to can we do async work? Can we leave each other notes? Can we pick up where someone left off? Can we collaborate, on Slack or Teams or whatever it is and shift that mindset to, well, I want to get my answer right now. I want to be able to turn and talk to Tom and get an answer for him right now. Or I'm okay with throwing the answer in there. I know Tom's going to answer as soon as he gets back and he's in and go. And I change my flow. I change the way I work. So the meetings, the async, that's really, really important. And then are we just so clear about what success looks like? And this is another really big area where big companies already suck at this. They already suck at telling regular employees, this is what we expect of you. This is what a good, if you did this year, these are your goals. And if your team did this and if your boss did that, this is what success looks like. Most companies with people in the office are terrible at that. And it is one of the most important things that you do with remote workers. Otherwise, we're saying, well, what are they doing when they're at home? What are they even working? They say all these stupid things because they have not been clear about what success looks like.
And in terms of creating the company culture for a remote organization, how does that differ in terms of creating a company culture for an on-premise organization? What are the considerations their employers should have?
How we figure out how people are doing and whether or not they are succeeding or whether or not they are thriving in that culture, that's what shifts. So if we're in the office together and suddenly you start coming in late all the time, do you not like your job or are you having a problem at home? Or maybe you have a problem with your car or your transportation. Like what's going on that's suddenly causing a change in your behavior? But I can notice that behavior. Or I may notice that every time you walk in the office, you look like you've been crying, or maybe you keep, going outside to take private phone calls. Like I can pick up on things, whether I'm your coworker or your boss, and go, hey, Karl, what's going on, man? Are you okay? Let's check in. And so that in those moments, the culture can wrap this little blanket around you and help you out if you're having a personal problem or you're having something going on. In remote work, we show up, we get on Zoom, we get on Teams, and we can turn on our fake face and we can pretend everything's okay and then get off the meeting and go and lay in bed and cry. And no one knows. And so we as leaders, we have to be able to get very good at asking good questions, finding opportunities, and designating times when this is the time we're going to check in. This is when we need to have that. I need to pull it out of you and figure out how you're really doing. And so in my books, I have this exercise called a bonding exercise that I suggest all teams and leaders do once a day, at least 3 times a week, that allows for all groups, but especially remote and hybrid teams, the opportunity to really share what's really going on with them right now in a non-evasive way so we can figure out, hey, you might be someone I need to support right now. You might be struggling. There might be something going on in your life. And that's where we find the disconnect when people say, oh, I don't feel like the culture is as good. It's not that the culture from the business is failing. It's that people don't feel connected to the people around them because no one has changed their intentional habits to try to facilitate a better conversation when we're all on the computers.
On the topic of AI, of course, we're going to be working alongside AI agents in all businesses over the years ahead. How does that change the future of work from your perspective?
There's a lot of areas where this can get better, a lot of areas where it can help. Certainly will remove a lot of the task-based stuff, that maybe the junk that employees don't need to be doing, so we can spend a little bit more time connecting and working on the human stuff. That's my hope. My dystopian view could be that the prompting agents get so good that they're essentially reading your email and responding to your email or responding to your Slack notices or your team notices, that like they could be doing all the work for you, that you would not even be paying attention. And we could get into this problem where, and this could be another threat to remote work, where I can't trust that you actually understand me or what I'm trying to do unless I'm physically in front of you and we have an actual conversation, because otherwise is it just our bots talking to each other, and I don't really know if you understand the real problem or if you've even read my emails yet.
So what advice have you got for employers around embracing AI in the workplace in 2025?
Well, figure out why you think it might be important. Be really clear about what you can do. And I think this is what the why is. It is imperative to your business. Your competitors are going to be, they're probably already wildly ahead of you. So the why is pretty clear. I mean, can you think about those people who resisted getting the internet or getting a computer, getting a website, all these things that happened years ago when we got the internet, and how much farther other people, how quickly they were able to adapt and secure business and grow. So that's the why. But the next thing you need to do is worry about the what. So don't worry about the how yet. Go out and start figuring out what tools might actually help you. So what can I do with ChatGPT? What can I do with Claude? What can I do with all these different things? And get really, really clear about what would actually help your business. Then there will be some smart people in your business, or consultants, or trainings, or other things that you can do to actually figure out the how. But I find most of the businesses struggling with AI are jumping right into the how. They want to know how ChatGPT works and what is and they don't really spending the actual time saying, well, what would actually be helpful for us? And getting that list down first and then worrying about the how.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Chris Dyer, a leading authority on company culture and remote working. And I'd like to thank Chris for joining us on this morning's show and providing us with a fascinating insight into this area.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.